Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. It's another day. Good morning, good morning. How are you, everyone? Good morning, good morning. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. See folks coming in. Hey, Robin Carden. So glad you're here this morning. Good morning, John. Great to see you. I trust you still have a beard. I've heard no updates, so hope you're well. Good to see you all coming along. How, how is it this morning? How is it with your soul? That this it has been a 24 hours for sure. Hey, good morning, Rudy and Debbie. Good to see you. I hope you're well. Miss seeing your faces. Hope you are grand. Truly. Hope things are keeping well for you. For now, good morning, Bonnie. Glad you're here. Hi, Jamie. Good morning. Glad things are well. You're doing all right. Sherry Ladd, good morning to you. Hey, Irene. Good morning to you. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Glad folks are coming along on this day. It is a Thursday all day long. But MRI next Friday. I assume that's to find out how things are healing, or is that new stuff? I will keep you in prayers either way. So I hope love is upon you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. See a few more folks pumping in. Hope you're doing all right. Got sailboats this morning. This is actually one of my very favorite cups. It's a mug with a good heft to it. You know what I mean? Like something to hold on to. Because we can all use a little something to hold on to, can't we? Trying to find something in the bad knee. I got you. Yeah. Good morning, Linda. How are you? Peace and grace to you this morning. Hope things are all right. All right. I see a couple more people coming in. We'll give them one more chance, and then we'll get going this morning. It is our journeying together that we have been through. So, just as an update, by the way, I did have a chance to touch base briefly with Pam yesterday, and she is doing fine. She got treated for her for some of her COVID symptoms, and but is well and is healing and is whole and it feels good. So is on the other side of all of that stuff. So if you were concerned about her, I just wanted to pass that on. I know some of you were praying for her. As she had come up positive, and so, but she is well, and her usual fun self. So she's such a joy. So just wanted to pass that on to all of you that have been caring and praying for her. Well, good morning, everybody. That we are on this 7th day of January, a Thursday at 11:11. Good morning, Donna. Glad you're here. That uh, and it's been a 24 hours, hasn't it? It's that boy. It is an epiphany like no other. I mean, this notion that epiphany might be this theophany, as we talked about yesterday, this coming of new and visions of God at work in the world. And wow, not what we expected about the celebration of Epiphany. Um, of course, if you don't know, I'm kind of talking about the events of the Capitol and this last day, and that the occupation for a little while of some protesters in the rotunda, um, and yet the Senate went back to work on that tomorrow last night, and many of kind of the and began its work again. And so the images I know uh, were disturbing to so many, so I wanted to start with the rotunda today, and talk about a few things, because it is crazy times. This is so many of the things that I've seen is this is the one of the memes that are going around out there is that 2021 looked at 2020 and said, "Hold my beer," and went off to do even crazier things. That we are in these exceptional times, and so I want to start, but I want to start with the rotunda, and then I want to get to a little bit about what I want to talk about of this, because folks were walking around in the Capitol Rotunda, and at the top of the Capitol Rotunda is something called the apioth the apotheosis of I can't say it. I could say it a minute ago until I got here. The apotheosis. There we go. The apotheosis of. Stay with me. Really, I'll try. I'm trying. The apotheosis of Washington. Now, this was painted by a guy with the name of Bermudi, and I'm going to hold it up here so that you can see it. It's got, and you can see Washington down here. This is called the apotheosis of Washington. Now, what is this word? Yesterday, our word of the day was theophany, which is this finding God in the world, in the incarnate world in our midst. Today, our world is apotheosis, which is the elevation of someone to godlike status. Now, this was painted in 1865 at the very end of the Civil War, and that it is this indication of, and it's at the top of the Capitol Rotunda. If you go into the Capitol Rotunda and look up, this is what you see: is you see George Washington looking down on you among the angels and all the hosts of heaven as a godlike figure. That and this whole notion of this elevation of the apotheosis of Washington and this apotheosis of government, and that, because I talked with many people, and I talked with a lot that over this over the last 24 hours, and there's something really jarring and jangling about seeing the protest that was going on versus many of the other protests. I mean, we've journeyed through a lot of violence and a lot of protests over this last year. A lot of them. I mean, downtown Minneapolis leveled. Like we saw a lot of cities on fire. We saw a lot of active violence and all that sort of stuff. And this is not to say this is not, don't hear me excusing things. Don't hear what I'm not saying. And yet, in the midst of all of this was, if nothing else, it was short-lived. Even though we have the grief of human lives lost in the midst of it. can never be excused. That and the movement into violence, which can never be excused. Yet, here we are. Senate's back in session. But when we talk about this, we talk about it with this that it worked on people. It disturbed people in ways that nothing else has. And in fact, I listened to a number of the senators talk about it, and one of the senators, Dick Durbin, said that the Senate chamber was a sacred place that had been desecrated. Now, I don't know about you, and the apotheosis of George Washington over the top of it would seek to convince you the same thing, that we are in hallowed ground. We are in sacred space when we enter into the Capitol Rotunda. I lived in Washington, D.C. for a year. I was there a number of times. I've been there a number of times. I've been all over the city, been all through it. It is set up for you to have this sense of grand reverie and reverence for all that happens and does there. And here's where I want you to stay with me, because we might get a little jangly here as we go along, but I want to go somewhere today, because we're talking about hard things and we have hard things to talk about. That the apotheosis of Washington, the elevation of Washington to God status, the elevation of the state to God status, the elevation of the rotunda to God status, to sacred status, is in many ways exactly what Jesus was fighting in the first century. In many ways was an encountering of it is a re-encountering of what we as people of faith and as Christians have always contended with, is the desire of the power of the state to co-opt the power of the divine. Now, I'm not talking about the church. I'm not talking about I thought about actually doing this from the sanctuary, but I didn't want to do it from the sanctuary, because I wanted to talk to you about this in a way that says that it's not about sacred space in that way, because that's not the sacred space of the world. If you want to know the sacred spaces of the world, what is it? It's where Jesus says, "Come to my table." The sacred spaces of the world are our dinner tables, friends. They're the places that we gather to minister and to wash the feet of the world. They're the places that we come to hold and to hug each other. They're the places that we come to encourage and to know each other. They're the places that we come to tell our stories around. The most sacred place in the Christian tradition is, in fact, the table. When Jesus says, "Do this in remembrance of me," he's talking about gather around the table. Gather around and sup and dine with us. Because hear this is from the 12th chapter of Mark. And I know you've all heard this, and I want to unpack it for you a little bit, because I think it's, and we're going somewhere, so stay with me. You may not like where we end up, and I'm willing to have that conversation with you, but I think we got to go on the journey. So stay with me. I know, we're doing all kinds of stuff today, but it's a heavy day. So we get some heavy things to work through. 12th chapter of Mark. And then they sent to him some Pharisees and some Herodians to trap him in what he said. They came and said to him, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. So, is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? Should we pay them or should we not?" But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, "Why are you putting me to the test? Bring me a denarius and let me see it." And they brought him one, and he said to them, "Whose head is this on, and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." And Jesus said to them, "Give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." And they were utterly amazed. Now, you probably always heard that interpreted in this way, that means you should pay your taxes, and that means you should give deference to, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Caesar's head's on the coin, so you should give him the coin. But the thing is that is not actually, I think, the proper interpretation of that. That's actually not the proper interpretation, because remember, Jesus was being put in a Jesus was being put in a bind here. They're trying to trap him. That whichever way he goes, he's in trouble. The reality is, and what every good Jew, particularly the Pharisees who were the sticklers for rules, particularly every good people, but what they knew at that time was that everything is God's. Everything is God's. Every breath, every heartbeat, every bird song, every moment, every speck of dust, every hair in your head, all of it's God's. When they say, look at the image of what God is doing, look at this image of what God is trying to do in this world, with this saying he's the Son of God, they were trapped. They were trapped. They had nowhere to go. They had no wiggle room. That's why it says they were utterly amazed. It's because he turned the tables on them and said, no, actually, everything is God's. And when I say render unto Caesar, it's actually saying there's nothing to be rendered under Caesar. Now, that's not to say, the thing is, he's not saying don't pay your taxes. What he's saying is that this notion of the apotheosis, this little idea that we've got this new God of George Washington that we have created with all of the hosts of heaven around, with all of the different pieces and parts. And by the way, these are all these guys around here, all these around the edges, they are either symbols of one of two things. They are either the colonies, symbols of the colonies, or they are symbols of Greek and Roman gods. You've got Serene there, you've got Vulcan there, you've got all of the symbols of the ancient world right in the middle of the American civil religion. Now, I'm not against the American civil religion. Don't hear me say that. That there is an importance for the way that we organize ourselves, and I think we've got the best way we know how to organize ourselves out of all the ways that we organize ourselves as people. That's not, no. Don't hear me say I'm against the American civil religion. What I am saying is that what we ended up with the problem of, and what they ended up with the problem of 2021, and I think it's the problem of 2020 as well, is that we've elevated the American civil religion to above that which is the true religion of Jesus the Christ, or the way in which we understand that which is higher than earthly powers. That whatever way you understand that's something that's bigger than this world, and that the way that we organize ourselves fits into something that's bigger than this world, the moment that we end up outside of that is the moment that we end up calling ourselves gods. We become in the business of trying to create our own gods and use and appropriate that power in such a way. And so what I think we saw yesterday is this playing out of these tracks that were laid down 170 years ago about this apotheosis of Washington. Washington was never to be apotheosized. He was never to be elevated to the status of God. And just as the way in which we organize ourselves in this world is never to be elevated to the status of God, just as the way in which we understand this our religious life together as not being sacred at town hall, or not being sacred in Washington D.C. or in the Capitol building. It's sacred where we gather, we, one or two, come to love each other, come to investigate our days together, come to break bread, come to teach and to learn and to love, where we come to serve one another with gladness and with wholeness of hearts. Friends, I want to invite you to just set down the apotheosis of this time. Because it's the big message that's out there. It's the big message that's in the media. It's the big message that's in the world. that either there is a King of Kings, either there is a Lord of Lords, or we're in this thing by ourselves, and we've got and it's just a dogfight to figure out who's on top. Those are our options, and that the witness to kind of this political theater that's playing itself out on all kinds of different ways and all kinds of different levels invites us simply to own and know the one who loves us and made us and came into this world to be as we are, and comes into this world to bring us into greater beauty and greater grace and greater love. And I think that happens right where we are. Right where we are. To turn away from our wrath, to turn away from our fear, to turn away from our grieving, to understand the anxiousness of our days are just that, anxiousness, and that keep on putting our faith in the one who made us, to keep on bringing to the Lord our anxieties, our griefs, our worries. And that doesn't mean that we need to compromise and to check things. That's the thing about this. And that's the thing I think about the brilliance of Jesus' answer about whose coin is it, and to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, because really, I mean, not that we don't give things to our government, we don't pay our taxes, all that sort of stuff, but it's to say it's not the greatest authority. If you do that, you do it as one that is subservient to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So that in that we find ourselves maybe in discomfort with the answers that we have, but we find ourselves in honesty. We find ourselves at the table. You know, with all due apologies to Senator Dick Durbin, that it is not sacred space there. It may be sacred for the American civil religion, but it's not my sacred space. My sacred space is the table in which my family gathers. My sacred space is the faces and the eyes that I see when we are in worship and in love and in agape creation with one another, when we come together in the declaration of love with each other, when we break bread around the table, when we come to know the places where we would offer our covenants to each other, when we would weep over our dead, when we would love those and bless those who've come into being. The sacred spaces of our lives are the places in which we live out the covenant with each other and with Christ Jesus. They are not halls of power. They are not places which would marshal energies to go out and control or conscript or break other peoples or other humans. We have come to this day not to compromise the way in which we move through this world, but to come and hear it with the fullness of what really matters. Look around in your life and look at what really matters to you. In behind those things, those are the logos. Those are the really real. Those are the highest of high. Now, I'm not saying our the ways in which we organize ourselves do not deserve elevation, but they are not the highest of things. And these days, friends, these days of epiphany, these days of theophany, these days are not days of apotheosis. They are not days where we're looking around to make gods out of things. They are days in which we are looking around to find the God that is coming to us right here and right now, right where we are. So I think the task of epiphany has been redoubled this day. that we might find in it the very face of Jesus the Christ. We may find in it the one who spoke us into being. We may find in it the giver of all good things to us right here and right now. And they are not in the shenanigans of the apotheosis of a guy that owned slaves. Sorry, but they're not. They are in the theophany of the finding and the seeing of the incarnated Christ in this world right in our midst. And those places are the sacred places. Those places are the high places. Now we've all, been shaken by this. And if you, I think that I don't think anybody that I know that's paying attention is immune from that, because we've all been given the American civil religion in one form or another. And I'm not saying abandon it. That's not my point. That's not at all my point. My point is that to remember that the American civil religion is a part of and a derivative of the true and great one the one who was, the one who is, and the one who is to come. The very one that sits on the throne of heaven. And I want to end with this, our reminder of this is from the 4th chapter of Revelation. And Revelation's it's a weird book, no question about it. But it is these visions and these symbolic visions where, like, if this isn't a symbolic vision, I don't know what is. Like this idea that we're elevating, with all of these symbols of Columbia gathered around Washington. But here are these symbols that come from Revelation. After this I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come here, and I will show you what must take place after this." At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow shone like an emerald encircling the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones. Seated on them were 24 elders, and were dressed in white, had crowns of gold in their heads. And the throne came flashing of lightnings and rumblings and peals of thunder. In front of the throne 7 lamps were blazing, and the 7 spirits of God. And in front of the throne there was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. There is one king. And there is no king but Christ, the one who sits on the throne, who reigns over you and I and all the things of this world. Do I know how God is going to use all the events of the last 24 hours? No, I do not. But I know that God will. I know that the one who put breath in my lungs and puts breath in your lungs brings to us a providence and a grace and a guidance that will get us through any and all things. So let us in these days set our eyes to the door of heaven, set our eyes to the true throne, set our hearts to the true altar of our lives, not the apotheosis, not a Capitol building, not the vilification of one side or another in the midst of our infighting over who gets the reins of this who gets to appoint the high priest of this particular incarnation of the civil religion. No. Look to Jesus the Christ, friends. Look to the one who points us towards the fact that God has all things. God knows all things. God is working through all things for the grand and great and beautiful redemption of the world. There is a door open right now for you to look towards that throne. There are elders of old that surround it that will point you there. There are teachers and voices of reason and light that will bring you into that space. And it is my hope that you will fill your cup with their wisdom, that you will open your minds to the beautiful, to the very beautiful in these days. And let that be your guide. Let the true altar, the table of your life where you gather around with those whom you love, the table of Jesus the Christ, and the grand table that Christ has set for you, and the place that God has created for you in this world, that all of it may come to soothe your soul, to give you the peace that surpasses all understanding right here and right now. May God's blessings be upon you. Amen. All right, friends. That's our journey for today. I know it was a lot. It's a big bite, but these are big days. So I hope that we find something together with you. So in the days ahead, we'll continue with our 11:11. We'll continue to journey together. I am so grateful for each one of you in this journeying. You bring me such encouragement and such grace. I cannot express. We are beginning, just by the way, as a commercial, we are beginning a journey here for the next 7 weeks. We are going to be centering in our worship what are known as the virtues. That we're going to come and we're going to explore the 7 great virtues of Christianity that have been pointed out through and found in the mind out of the teachings of Jesus that are about how we are to navigate this world. You see, I think that in this time of disorder and in this time of disorientation, this time of in disorientation, this losing our east, losing our point to the divine, to me, I think returning ourselves to the virtues, the pursuit of the ways to be in this world. Like, that's the thing about the virtues. The virtues are not orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is about right thinking. The virtues are about orthopraxy. They're about how do we be this thing how do we be in relationship with this Jesus guy? Like, how do we do this? How do we work it out in a world that's gone crazy? And I think it is a returning to the virtues as a way to do that. And that's what we're going to do for the next 7 weeks. So that's just a little commercial about what's going to happen on Sunday. And we'll be back on Tuesday for another 11:11. I encourage you to put your comments over here. I'll take a look at them that we're in this journey together, friends. Like, all of you that are hearing my voice, all of you that are on this, you're not alone. You're not alone. Do not let your heart be separate from the great fire that burns within, from the great fire that has been kindled by this community and this church. Don't hide that light, because it's so precious and it's so needed right now. All right, friends. Peace and grace to you all. Thanks for being here.